Yes, yes, yes. I like that face. Welcome to ACT, Root to Fruit. My name is Marcel, and I'm joined today by the lovely Joanne Steinwachs. So I'm on a quest to better understand the roots of contextual behavioral sciences. And I'm interested in that because I think that it's important to the work that we do as clinicians, and I want the fruits that we deliver and the fruits that I deliver to be as pristine as possible. Mm-hmm. So I'm on a quest, and I've got some guides along the way. My first one is my buddy Joanne, who we've done some work together over the years.
We have.
Though we have a pretty good streak of social distancing going on, I have to say.
Right? We've never met face to face. How weird is this, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, brave new world that we're in.
Uh-huh. So Joanne is a social worker, licensed clinical social worker in Denver, and she teaches, she treats, she trains. She's an expert in particular in trauma care. And
I don't think I'm an expert in trauma care. I'm a little edgy on that one. I think I've done a lot of it, but there are people who are experts.
But if I do remember correctly, a few weeks ago, they flew you to Israel to give a training on trauma.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. All right. So whatever that means, that's what Joanne is. And
I'm just uneasy about it because, there are really, really heavy hitters, particularly in our community, like Robin Walser, who've been studying and publishing and writing about trauma for decades.
Yeah.
So when I say expert, that's what I look to.
Okay. And so what else was I going to say, though, about that? You're a peer-reviewed ACT trainer.
I am. I'm a recognized functional analytic psychotherapy trainer.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And a fun person with a wicked mind.
Can you tell my daughter that? Could you just text her and say your mother is a fun person with a wicked mind?
I will. Yeah.
Not an annoying, nudge.
As long as you tell my partner that.
Okay, I will do that.
The same about me. Assuming you think that about me. Uh-huh. So so ACT is it's called ACT Root to Fruit, but it's kind of just it's a clickbait, really. I'm sorry, people, but this is about contextual behavioral sciences. This is about FAP. This is about IBT,
radical behaviorism.
Yeah, thank you.
Learning theory. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so
Skinner.
And so many of us come to this arena because of ACT. It's got some cachet these days, and I'm a few years into my journey, and so, but I'm just finding that it's difficult. It's really difficult to really understand this stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And what I thought about recently was it's kind of like this, like I the first book that I read on ACT book was an anxiety book by John Forsyth and George Eifert. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I just read it and I was like, it was just revolutionary to me. Right. Okay. I was really struggling with my philosophical my theoretical orientation. And I read this book and it was like, yeah. So I'm reading this. I'm like, yes. Okay. Then I go to a boot camp and yes, I drank the Kool-Aid. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so that is kind of like, for me, is just like it's a feeling thing. It's a community thing. And it's kind of like
a community thing, like going to a boot camp.
Yeah. Going to boot camp and just, for me, it was like a good feeling, I'm reading this and it's like touching parts of me that I like not, it's kind of almost like, you read something and it's like something you've never learned before, but you know it to be true.
Exactly.
And so what I was thinking about recently was how it's kind of like, you take a pill, a medication, and some feel good when you take them, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Not that I've ever abused any kind of medications in my life, but so you take a medication and that's kind of like what the feel good thing is the boot camp or the trainings, which they're really amazing because you get involved. But what you got to do afterwards is read the formulary. Of the
No, you actually have to go learn chemistry.
Right. Okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. But that's even worse. I've taken
much worse. I know it's horrible. I was a nutritional
science undergrad and I've done all that.
It's horrible.
And I've probably lost a few years of my life doing that. Yeah. So, but even that, so I'm on the formulary right now. I'm not on chemistry yet. Mm-hmm. Okay. it's pretty damn boring to read.
Yeah, it's really boring. Yeah, it's boring.
Okay.
Chemistry is even worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Philosophy of science is, dead boring. It makes your eyeballs bleed. It's so boring.
Yes. So hey, I want to take advantage of this awesome medium we have. And I think that there's a certain, in this post-truth era that we're living in, there is a certain return to the oral history. I want to see people speak something. Okay.
Right.
And that's what I want to take advantage of here. And also, we're just all so busy. And so, maybe this will serve a purpose of like, hey, I got 10 minutes, I'm riding in my car, or, whatever. Throw this in and let me get grounded some more in this thing that's really important to me, but difficult to do.
Yeah, it is. It's really, and the thing I think that's confusing about behavioral principles is they sound very simple. Yeah. So we think they're easy. Not so much.
Yes.
Yeah. There's not a ton of variability. I mean, behavioral principles apply, no matter micro, macro, meso, they're consistent, but that doesn't make them easy to understand, to see, and to use. Yeah. In my experience.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your experience and come into this path?
Well, I had a real similar experience to yours. I mean, I came into ACT, I think, the first or second Reno Summer Institute. So I don't know when that was, 2000 something. And my first ACT workshop was with Steve Hayes. So it was like, holy crap, I'm drinking from the fire hose here. Oh my gosh. But what had happened before, I mean, I've told the story multiple times, but what happened before, I was really getting burned out. I was mid-career and I was super, super burned out. My practice was busy, but I was just sick of what I was doing. Just like, it's your mother. Okay, see you next week. It's your mother. See you next week. It's your mother. Okay, maybe we need to do 2 sessions this week. It's your mother. I mean, I was lots of awareness and understanding and insight. And my clients really weren't moving all that much. And I was getting super, super bored and burned out. So I was talking to a colleague of mine, who's still my colleague, he's my office mate. His name's John Bell. He's a psychiatrist here in Denver. And I was saying, I'm getting burned out. I don't want to do it anymore. So, well, there's this book you could read. It's called Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. And I'm like, nah, I'm not reading any more books. Because I'd done all of that, right? I'd done all these trainings and readings and all that. So you got to read this.
Do you want to talk about what you were doing at that time?
Oh, yeah. I was actually transitioning. So I came out of grad school, and I don't know what your grad school experience was like, but mine was basically, what's it called? Eclectic.
Yeah.
Theoretically eclectic, whatever. And I'm a social worker, so it had to be kind of contextually bound, person and environment. So you had to make, and it had to be like that. But it was such a mess, man. I couldn't find any kind of sort of conceptual ground. Yeah. And for whatever reason, I started working with really challenged people early in my career. They've just shown up in my practice over and over and over again. Yeah. So it wasn't like I was talking to people about, I wasn't necessarily working with the worried well. I was working with people who were really, really, really challenged. So not having any solid ground or clarity about what I was doing was more than just disturbing to me.
What do you think is a solution to that in graduate training, as far as like, giving people, because not everybody's going to be a third waiver. And not to say that. Okay, but yeah, I don't know.
Go big or go home, man. It's like, why not? I think everybody should be. I'm laying it out here. I am a radical behaviorist. That's what I am. That's my stance. Yeah. I'm not, this isn't like a technique. This is a fundamental stance in the world for me.
Okay. So,
and not just professionally.
It's your religion.
No, I don't think it's my religion. I think it's my worldview. It's the way I see the world and how
I like that. I like that term much better than the one I used. Yeah. Was it appropriate of me in a functional contextual way to say that I like that more?
Like what more?
Your term worldview.
Appropriate in how? I don't even know what you're saying.
I just often think about like, how am I reinforcing things with clients? And I find myself all the time saying, oh yeah, that's good.
Okay, you just made a really common error where you can determine a reinforcer out of context and beforehand. The only way you can tell if something is reinforcing is to do it and observe the outcome.
Okay.
I mean, and be clear about what it is you're hoping to shape and reinforce. But there's no such thing as a sort of a box you could pull out of this is a reinforcer. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know.
So the error I made was in saying that any value judgment that I give to someone's behavior is a reinforcer.
For what?
Well, I don't know. Because I had mentioned to you like that I liked your use of the term worldview rather than what I said as far as a religion.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so you said that I made a common mistake.
Yeah, thinking that, I mean, it's reinforcement as a concept is just referring to, this is my understanding of it, I'm going to use regular language, not geeky behavioral language. How I respond to you. You do something, I respond. Right? And if I'm doing something and you respond in the direction that I'm hoping that you will, then what I did was a reinforcer.
Okay.
But I can't tell if what I just did is reinforcing until I see your reaction to what I did. Right. And then, so the other thing I'm wondering about is, well, reinforcing for what? What are you trying to reinforce? Mm-hmm. You see, so that's the other thing. It's very, in a weird way, behavioral principles are very vague and very precise at the same time. So you're saying it's a reinforcer. Okay, well, what are you trying to reinforce?
Well, and reading humans is not so easy.
No, it's absolutely not easy.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing I thought was really confusing for me about learning behavioral principles, because they sound very, very precise and mechanistic,
Yeah.
Very tidy.
Yeah.
And human behavior, I mean, I think if you're working with pigeons, sure. Well, maybe not even pigeons, but definitely, nonverbal creatures, nonverbal beings. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But humans are super messy. So when I'm looking at, let me just tell you a story. This is something that happened to me. Well, early in my training, I was a big Kelly Wilson fan. I still am. And I went to one of his workshops and he showed a video of him doing therapy. And I'm a clinician, so that's like crack to me, right? Mm-hmm. So he's showing this video and he's talking about ACT, and all of a sudden he says, wow, look at those contingencies. You can just see the reinforcement contingencies moving, can't you? And I was like, no. What's a reinforcement contingency? What? Stop, Kelly. And he went on, he just went on, because for him, that's how he was trained. Reinforcement, you could see the contingencies. And I couldn't. I had no idea what he was talking about. But that was like, okay, how do you do that? How do you see contingencies? And now I can see contingencies. Mm-hmm. I can see reinforcement. I can see behavioral contingencies moving.
Can you rewind a little bit and talk about your journey to being able to do that?
Oh God, it was complicated. I went to, like you did, I went to workshop after workshop. And I see a lot of people who come to me for consultation will say the same thing. I've read 900 ACT books. I've gone to 50 trainings. I still don't know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I say things like, okay, well, let's start with functional contextualism and philosophy of science. And they're like, what? Like, yeah, that's where we got to start. We got to start with this really boring, basic, geeky stuff. You need to understand this part first.
Okay.
And so no one was there. I didn't have a Joanne for me when I was that's really what informs how I train and how I supervise. I don't want anyone to go through the brutal learning curve that I went through.
Okay.
So I didn't have anyone saying, I remember talking to Steve about this once. He said, oh, just read Catania, And I picked up the Catania book and I felt as stupid as you could possibly feel. It was almost as bad as reading the first RFT book.
Yeah.
Where you understand the words, you have no idea what they're talking about it was just, I was at such a basic level that even for people who are trained in behaviorism, I was even less, I don't know how to say it. I didn't know what they were talking about, but I'd nod my head and go, oh yeah, sure. So long story short, I just struggled and struggled and struggled. I started reading this horrible, geeky behavioral stuff. It made no sense to me. And then finally, I just despaired. And there was an incredibly strong behavioral program here in Denver, at the Graduate School for Professional Psychology. It's changed now. It's not as strong as it was. But I went to the person who I think is kind of the heart of this program. His name's John McNeil. And I said to him, behaviorism, you don't know me, but will you teach it to me? Mm-hmm. Just out of the blue, And, he was so kind to me. And I think in many ways, he's the man who made ACT understandable for me. He's a person.
Yeah.
So he had me read these really, really deep conceptual articles. And, I have a whole big packet of them, and talk about them and work with them. And he was so, so incredibly patient and kind with me. I hired a grad student who was learning behavioral principles to help me learn with them. I went to another person here in Denver. His name's Jim Gallagher, who's probably a second wave behaviorist. I don't think he thinks RFT is very valid. But he actually walked me through how to do really super grounded exposure work using behavioral principles.
Okay.
And it took me probably a good 4 years of that for me to get it.
Consistent.
Yeah. Consistent. Sweat.
Yes.
Sweating blood.
You were hungry. What was motivating? What was inspiring your hunger? What was driving your,
My clients. Okay. My clients. Yeah. I mean, I'm a clinician. That's what I do. That's my ground. Mm-hmm. And I'm here to serve my clients. And I wasn't helping clients the way I wanted to, the way I thought it could be done, and I didn't know anything about exposure, at all when I started this. I mean, I thought, if someone's got PTSD, you talk about how it's this and how it's that. You don't ask them to go through some of the worst experiences of their lives, moment by moment by moment, molecularly, very slowly, again and again and again and again, until the arousal sort of softens.
Okay.
To me, that was abuse. I was re-traumatizing people, right? And so I'm really sad about this. For a big chunk of my practice, I was working with people who really absolutely needed ACT-informed prolonged exposure.
Yeah.
And they weren't getting that from me. They weren't. So after Jim and John Bell, the other man, helped me, my work my work with people with trauma, it's not even the same work.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not the same work. It's just not. Yeah.
And
that way, the thing that was so powerful for me is pain is not the problem.
Yeah.
Right. All of my work before ACT was about avoiding and controlling distress. That's what good work looked like. And it didn't work.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like building a dependency on you.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And I hated it.
Mm-hmm.
It was awful.
Yeah, I personally am fed much less when a client tells me how much I'm helping them than when I, see what's going on.
Yeah, me too.
And so can you talk a little bit about like your own internal journey? Because I'm hearing obviously that your clinical acumen and ability to help people was just exponentially increased during this ride. But what about just like the rest of your life outside of?
Oh God, it's incredible. It's so incredible. I mean, I have a history of PTSD myself. I have fairly significant social anxiety. And I have panic disorder. I have panic attacks. So, and I have attention deficit issues too. I mean, I'm just like, oh my God. And I just thought of myself as this broken fraud, and so much of what I was doing was to prove myself worthy. Personally, professionally, just everywhere.
Yeah.
And I thought of myself as a fixer-upper. You buy this rundown house and you fix it up, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this rundown house was never going to be fixed up because it kept falling down. And it was miserable.
Yeah.
Miserable. And so using ACT myself, fully and without defense as it is, not as it says it is. I am not what I experience. I am, given a distinction between me and what I'm struggling with. That for me was super profound. Yeah. Oh my God.
You're a big proponent of the ACT question.
I am a huge proponent of the ACT question because it just works for me.
You don't hear too much these days.
You don't. Yeah. But it organizes me very easily, much more than the Hexaflex or the Matrix, which I also think are really cool tools. But for me, they don't work as well.
Yeah. Okay. So we
should stop because people don't know what the ACT question is. So I should just say it.
Okay. Yeah. Please.
Given a distinction between me and what I'm struggling with, am I willing to have that fully and without defense as it is, not as it says it is, and move in the direction of my values in this moment?
Yeah.
That's ACT.
I'm going to put that my reggae dub track back on, and you
should.
can start.
No. No.
I could feel it though. It was cool. I can see that at the cellular level in you when you're saying that, and I can. So, thanks for sharing that with us.
And it's a simple. It's what I love about it is I just have to. It gives me places to stop and check. Do I have a distinction? No. Well, let's get to work on that. Mm-hmm. Fully and without defense. Yeah, not so much. Only this bit here. Well, there you go. Yeah. Usually, when I'm struggling with fully and without defense, it's because I'm having it as it says it is, not as it is. It's all connected too, which is lovely to see it all kind of work together.
So talk about the link between you metabolizing this as a worldview and you being able to practice this with clients.
I think it happened at the same time.
Okay.
It wasn't, one of the things I love about experiential workshops, the workshops, is because for me, I dove in and I was like, I drank the Kool-Aid by the gallon, at the workshops. So I would have these really powerful personal experiences first. And then I'd go into my therapy sessions and try to do that with clients that would blow up in my face, which is another story. Mm-hmm. But that sense of like, my God.
Wait.
Right, finger traps. Oh, I told you the story, right?
I have a gross of these.
I did too. I had a gross of finger traps, right? Because you can't buy them in a smaller quantity, right? No. Oh my God. Right.
Luckily, you can give them away in a large quantity.
Yes, you can. Oh, you did. You literally bought a gross of finger traps too?
I did. Yeah. Oh, God. And I still have, 134 of them.
I know. God. But when I saw that finger trap thing, it was revelatory for me. It was, one of the things I love about these canned, I don't know, canned isn't quite the right word, but these
staged.
They're classic ACT interventions, is that they demonstrate something.
Yeah.
The thing that I find
it's the menu.
Yeah, I think it's like that. But when I was learning it, I learned it as this is what to do.
Okay.
But I think it's intended as this is a way to demonstrate something that's hard to talk about. There's many ways to address this. But I took it early on in my career. I said, well, Steve does finger traps. I'm going to go into my office next Monday and I'm going to do finger traps, whether it's contextually valid or not.
Or pull my seat up so I'm sitting on someone's lap.
Right. Exactly. Right. Let's do eyes on. What the hell?
This is really weird what we're going to do right now. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay. Right. And I would have clients ask me, did you go to a workshop? Because you're just weird. Yeah, I did.
But that's how we have to learn, right? We have to watch.
I do. Yeah, absolutely. That's how we have to learn.
Okay.
And it's messy. And I think anything worth doing is worth sucking at for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I was a terrible ACT therapist. I was so clunky. And the thing is I think if somebody listened or watched my work right now, they wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't look like a classic ACT therapist. I don't.
Okay.
But what's informing me and everything that I'm doing when I'm interacting with a client is absolutely, behaviorism, functional contextualism, RFT.
Okay.
They're all working for me in that when I'm working.
When was the last time you did a kind of cliche ACT intervention?
Oh God, it's probably been, well, let me think about it, I use metaphor all the time, constantly.
Yeah.
But an actual physicalized metaphor, probably over a decade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
One that's classic. Clients and I will spontaneously make stuff up together.
Yeah.
But this sort of, I use, holding a beach ball underwater a lot as an idea. Okay. But I do, Manuela O'Connell does this really beautiful work with physicalized metaphors. You should get her on this podcast. Okay, yeah. She was on the other podcast and she's amazing.
Yeah.
So she does it on the fly. She's very gifted. She's super gifted.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I do it.
And very humble.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she really is. She's very humble.
Yeah.
And so I work very similarly to what she's talking about as it shows up, physicalized metaphoring.
Okay. So I just want to
Which I think is the point, of all of those classic ACT interventions, is to bring it out of this kind of conceptual, heady framework and into a really embodied present moment, right here, right now, you and I stance.
Yeah, I've experienced some of that, and I want to experience more.
Yeah, keep at it. Practice.
I will. So I just want to rewind and acknowledge too that something you said in terms of kind of being a broken house or defective is something that I don't think gets acknowledged enough in our field. I think that's something that I really appreciated about ACT was like it was like a level playing field. Like we're all messed up humans that have this problem with language that, blah. And
here's the piece that's really interesting. In analytic, when you're looking at analysis, one of the things that's really lovely about it is the recognition that we're all messed up humans.
Yeah.
Right. But the reason for it and what you do about it is very different. We're all messed up humans. And then you went into because of language. That is revelatory. That changes everything.
Yeah. Because
of language, that changes everything.
Yeah.
As opposed to because of your crappy upbringing, because of your whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, it did.
Yes. I'm with you.
Yeah.
And where I was going with that was just we're all attracted to this field for a reason. Okay. I think. I mean, maybe that's my bias. That's me. I mean, I think that I can relate a lot to what you talked about in terms of just feeling defective and shame and all kinds of stuff. And
many of us come from really, really challenged backgrounds. And, we couldn't help our families, so we want to help.
Yeah. And it makes sense. I mean, you see people doing just some of the most powerful work in progressive work in our world are people who have been affected by something personally.
Yeah.
Right. So we shouldn't hide from, that's just my point. We shouldn't hide from it. I just think that a lot of graduate programs are so stuffy, and it bothers me. It really bothers me.
Yeah. I just, when I'm around that really stuffy professional, it's really funny. I try so hard not to, but when I'm around that uber professional, very kind of, I don't know how to call it, academic thing, fuck just jumps out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I just, it's almost like a Tourette's thing,
That reminds me, I wanted to make a public service announcement.
I'm sorry. I said it.
This is a public PSA, public service announcement. Don't take yourself too damn seriously.
That's right. Exactly. Okay. Or anybody else.
Yeah.
Anybody else.
Yeah. So, okay. So where were we? Where should we go?
Where do you want to go?
I don't know.
You've asked me a lot about, how did you get there? How did that work for you? Any tips or tricks along the highway? Any ways to debrutalize the learning curve and find someone to do it with.
Yeah. I'm going to be speaking with Miranda Morris about just the role of community in learning.
Yeah.
She's just a powerhouse. And
she is. I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. So finding community. Yeah. That's important. That was part of your early.
Well, let me say this a different way. I think peer groups, learning groups, have some utility. They're good. But I went to people who knew a lot more than me.
I see. I
went to people who could correct me if I went off on the wrong tangent. And I think in peer groups sometimes that doesn't happen. I don't want to be with people who are as competent and smart as I am. I want to be with people who are smarter and more competent than I am because I can learn from them. Now, I know this is heresy. I understand all that. But it just in terms of learning, you got to go to the people who know the most. So
that would look like consultation then?
It would look like consultation. It would. I mean, I paid a lot of money to learn this. It wasn't a graduate education, but it wasn't free.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, when I was working with Jim Gallagher, I went every week.
The comedian?
Yeah. No, he's a behaviorist here in Denver. Brilliant behaviorist here in Denver. And I bring tapes and I do cases and over and over, and it's just, and that wasn't cheap.
Yeah.
But he gave me, I mean, it was like working with a combination laser and fire hose, which is wonderful. Okay. And John was the same way. John Bell and John McNeil are the same way, and other people too. I trained with Robin Walser. I talked with Kirk Strozal. I mean, I just went to people who I thought really did what I wanted to do, and said to them, "Teach me how to do that." Yeah. And how much will that cost? Which sucks, it'd be lovely if it could be free. Yeah. But we have to make a living.
So where does somebody start out if they're gonna? I mean, okay, so they maybe they find someone they can do some consultation with, and I'm sure that person will give them some instruction. But assuming they don't find someone to do consultation with, and they're going to have to take the route Joanne took before there was this Joanne. What should they pick up first to really get into the roots?
Well, there's a really great book that I read called Behaviorism in Everyday Life, or Behavioral Principles in Everyday Life. It's a basic a primer based on behaviorism. And the thing I like about that book is it makes connections between our own living daily life and behavioral principles, which I thought was really, really helpful for me.
I'll put a link to that.
Behaviorism in Everyday Life, or something like that. Behavioral Principles in Everyday Life. That was great. Something that I don't know if it would be. I'm trying to. I'm sifting through the stuff that I read. There's so much of it. I think that's where I started. As I needed that level of this is a undergraduate text for behavioral principles. And if there was like a first grader text for behavioral principles, start there and work your way up. Okay. Find the simplest, most accessible, understandable way of seeing contingencies as you possibly can. Okay. So there's that. What else did I read that was really good? I like Mecca Chiasa's work. She talks about why we need to use this geeky language and why it's important. But that for me was just something useful for me. I like Eric Fox stuff on RFT. Okay. But it was hard for me to translate that into clinical application, bring it into clinical application. Okay. Patty Bach's book. This wasn't what I learned when I was, beginning. Patty and what's his name? DJ Moran's book. God, what's the name of it? I can't think of it right now. It's brilliant. It's basically applied behavior analysis and ACT, and it's very, very. It's a wonderful book. I absolutely recommend.
I'll look it up and put it in the notes.
It's great. It's wonderful. Okay. So those are the ones I'd start with, probably.
Well, so on that note, you said something that reminded me. Let's talk a little bit about the history of ACT. Where does it come from?
I don't know. I'm not an expert in that. I would imagine. Well, what I understand it comes out of Steve and maybe Kelly and Kirk looking at how Skinner's brilliant life, world altering work sort of faltered around language. Okay. I mean, I remember reading Skinner, the early stuff, and I'm not going to be able to quote Skinner books and stuff, but I remember reading his books and going, yeah, right. Yeah. Oh God. Yes, absolutely. Sure. And then he'd talk about language and it was like, what? He started, in my experience, he started having on all of these unobserved hypotheticals, all these kinds of, the clarity and the beauty of it just fell for me. Okay. So when Steve and Kelly, I think mostly Steve, I'm not sure, Steve, Kelly, and not Derek, Barnes Holmes. Yvonne and her part Dermot. And when I started reading their stuff, it was like, oh, yeah. Okay. Language is an operant. Oh my God. That makes sense.
So here's my question though. And for clarity, we have the comprehensive distancing coming out of kind of radical behaviorism.
I don't know.
Okay. Sure. Well, where is RFT in this?
I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I mean, you're asking for, I'm an applied, if it helps me do better clinical work, I'll do it.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose I could go back and figure all that out. Where does it come from? But I think you should get somebody here who actually knows.
Oh, they're coming. Don't worry.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. So, yeah.
But you had mentioned RFT. So I just thought we'd quick, because this is, you're my first guide here. And you're walking me to the woods.
You poor guy.
You're walking me to the woods, Joanne. Mm-hmm. And you're going to hand me off to the next guide.
2 go out, 1 comes in. Kind of like that. I think if you don't, to understand relational framing, you absolutely need to understand behavioral principles. You can't get it without it.
Okay.
Language as an operant means nothing if you don't understand basic behavioral principles.
Okay.
So I'm a big fan of, people go into RFT but they don't have the fundamental ground. So that's one thing, understanding basic behavioral principles, but also having a worldview that is coherent and is consistent. Functional contextualism is not like any other sort of stance. There isn't another stance like radical behaviorism is very, very, very close. Mm-hmm. But this idea that there are no things. There's no, like you said, what's a reinforcer? That's not a functionally contextual stance. When you ask me that question from a functionally contextual worldview, it makes no sense. Is that reinforcing? I don't know. Okay. So that's, I think, the most important shift to make and the hardest. Okay. Because we think in objects, we think in things, we think in terms of essential realism. Okay. And it's very difficult to shift into a functional contextual worldview where there's no ground. Yeah. Like earlier you're talking, and I do this a lot with people. They'll say something and they'll say that, whatever. And I don't know what that refers to. I have no idea what they're talking about. So I'll stop and I say, what is that? What do you mean? What's that? And it's challenging, I think, for people when they're talking to me, mostly clinically, but also interpersonally, because I don't assume I know what you mean just because we're using the same word. Mm-hmm. I often assume we don't mean the same thing. Right? And that idea that there are no stable reference, not reference, ENTS, not ENCS, ENCE, is really a weird world to live in. I don't know, it depends, is a very, very strange place to land. Mm-hmm. Humans hate it. We don't like ambiguity. No. And if you're going to stand in a functional contextual worldview, you have to stand in ambiguity. You have to stand in not being able to make sweeping sort of statements about the world. So when a moment ago you said something about people coming to this field, blah, 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 and you made a sweeping statement. Yes. And I paused and you saw me pause. I did. It's like, I don't know, maybe. Okay. Sure. Uh-huh. Yeah. And I think that's the weirdest part of living in a functional contextual worldview is I can't make sweeping statements. And
if you do, you're not. Well, sweeping.
Me, you, me, Joanne, or you generally humans?
Joanne, if you do make a statement, take a stand, you're going in contrast to.
I'm always in a stand. It's not that I don't take a stand.
Okay.
My stand is a functional contextual stand.
Yeah.
But stand and functional, the language doesn't work. This is why I think Kelly and Steve and them may develop these metaphors and these practices and these ACT interventions, because you can't, it's really hard to think functionally and contextually when you're using our language, for sure. Stand. Well, that's a noun. That's a thing. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, no, I'm standing. I stand. I'm standing. And I know where my standing is. It's in functional contextualism. I know where I stand in that. But that stand, does this make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It does. Yeah. I have so many questions about it. And, when you have so many questions about something, you're not even sure where to start.
I know, right? I know.
Yeah.
But when I started learning this, when I got that, that was like the key to the kingdom. Everything started to fall into place for me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's what that means.
Yes.
And it's super difficult to put it into language right now. I'm struggling to say it in a way that it actually feels to me.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask a question here. Have you read the book Sapiens?
Mm-mm.
No.
Mm.
It's the subtitle is A Brief History of Humankind or something like that. And he does a really good job of telling stories and weaving in history and evolution. And he talks about this shared fiction we have as humans that we're able to that really separates us and from other species. Mm-hmm. And he uses the point.
So he's talking about language, right?
Yeah, language. Yeah, he's talking about language, and he uses like an LLC as how we can make this entity have just as much power, or a corporation as much power as a human. And the corporation can live long after the person who started it died, and it's a shared fiction that we have. Right. Mm-hmm. Am I getting at a little bit of what you're talking about right now?
I'm not sure what you're saying to me right now.
Okay.
I think you're making a connection.
Yeah, I'm trying to make a connection in terms of this standing versus a stand that doesn't exist is what you're saying.
Well, if I were going to sort of unpack that, I haven't read the book, so this is probably, off. He's using a metaphor, but it's a metaphor. LLC only means something like that in a particular context at a particular time in a particular situation. Mm-hmm. It's not solid.
Yes.
And that's the thing that our language pulls for, is a sort of solid, eternal, kind of unmoving quality.
Yeah.
And LLC, it's LLCing, licensed limited corporation, right? Whatever. Mm-hmm. Right? That's just a moving. One of the things that John McNeil talked to me about that I really loved, he talked about reality being like a river. When you're looking at a river, what defines a river?
The water, the boundary, the field, or the dirt or stone that's holding it there.
Well, what if the river's drying up? Is it still a river?
If it's dried
up. Or if it's in a place where it is dried up for a period of time, does it still remain a river? What he brings to it is that a river, this thing that we think of as solid, and it's made up of the water, the ground around it, the atmosphere, the climate, the headwaters, everything around it.
Yeah. Comes
together in this constellation, this sort of interaction of rivering. So then he takes it, it's so cool. So he says, and then you look in the river, there's a whirlpool in the river. What makes a whirlpool? It's this confirmation of factors that temporarily I'm making air quotes, creates a whirlpool. But we talk about a whirlpool as if it's a thing rather than a relational phenomenon that is alive and moving. Mm-hmm. You see?
Yeah.
So for me, as a functional contextualist, when I'm working with someone who's got this, this really hard, solid, this is me quality, right? If I get caught up in that, I'm lost. But if I see it as like, your whirlpool is like the great spot of Jupiter. On Jupiter. But the great spot on Jupiter isn't a thing. It's not eternal. It's not solid.
It's happening right now.
It's happening. Yeah. That's it. That's all.
Okay.
And I don't know what happens next. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happens next.
Yeah, it's very destabilizing.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
But it's also enormously freeing.
Yeah.
I mean, I say all the time to my clients, I don't know what happens next. And if you do, I need some lotto numbers, man.
Yeah.
I literally don't know what's happening next. I don't often know what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I can see you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
This is for me, this is what standing in functional contextualism means.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Well,
it's very disorienting.
Yeah, it is.
Until it's not anymore. Until you can see contingencies.
Yeah.
And then I'm, it's freeing. God, it's freeing. It's so wonderful.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And it's weird. I spend a lot of time with people not understanding what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What people?
Clients, colleagues, you.
Okay.
I mean, I can see your mind trying to turn it into what you already know. Oh, it's like this. No, it's not like that.
It's not like that.
No, it's not.
Well, that's why I'm going on this journey, Joanne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I need community, and this is this is part of it. It's a big part of it. So, yeah, destabilization.
Oh, hold on a minute. I got to plug my computer in. It's more than destabilization. It's annihilation in many ways. Right? Everything that, if you think of yourself not as Marcel, but Marcelling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What does Marcelling look like today? And what will looking at ourselves as this sort of fluid, unstable process is so bizarre and yet incredibly freeing. Right? I don't know what happens next. Like all this stuff that's going on in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you read the news, in my experience, if you read the news, it's like, well, this is what's happening and this is what's going to happen next. I'm like, I don't know, maybe. I have no idea. I have no idea what this means.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Okay.
So many things have been happening just in the world right now that you never would have expected.
Yeah.
You would never have seen that coming, both pleasant and unpleasant, reassuring and scary. And that's the nature of reality. It's like, it's not something you can contain in a box and label and name. And that includes us. And my clinical work, I see stuff happening that I never would have expected. Just did not see that one coming.
Mm.
Yeah. Oftentimes I'll go into a session. I'm like, all right, this is what's going to happen right now. And I'm going to have to do that.
Yeah.
Never happens. Never works that way. So now I'm at the point where I'm saying that to myself. I'm like, yeah, whatever, Joanne. I can't stop it. I still do it, but I'm not as trusting of that as I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that this is what's going to happen. That's what I'm going to do. It's always bad, by the way. It's never pleasant.
It has to go this way. Kind of railroading.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
so. Anyway,
and back to the didactic portion of ACT. You could pick up some books and manuals or whatever, and you'll see, session 1, you do this. Session 2, you do this.
Yeah.
So, my sense, when I went to that first boot camp, my guttural sense was that there had been some shift from kind of coming at it from the science to the art of it, and it had been kind of more in the art of the technique and not so much grounding. And I might be off base, but I've heard other folks, who are high up in ACBS make similar comments about the science being lost.
Well, it's hard. It's not an easy, if we're talking about dissemination, which I think in many ways the boot camps and the workshops are, I think you have to give something appetitive, because learning behavioral principles is absolutely not.
Yeah.
And functional contextualism, standing in that place or having that orientation is just uncomfortable and weird. So it's just not a sexy product. You got to sexify it up somehow.
Yeah.
So I think that, there again, we've got that kind of solid realism. It is this, it is that. And as opposed to, this is
Mm-hmm.
all an alive process that's moving all the time. Right? And whatever, I would imagine if you took 10 people from a boot camp and you started them in the same boot camp, and then you just talk to them and watch them and listen to them over the next 10 years, you'd see similar, but things you wouldn't expect.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been to a boot camp in a really long time, but the last one I went to, there were people I could see there that were like in tears because the world started making sense.
Yes.
And they felt this sense of hope.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, great. Now, if we have a way of saying to people like you and people that come to me all the time, like, I got all of this, but I'm stuck.
No.
And helping people learn all of this boring stuff, then I think we've got, we could take over the world.
Sounds good.
Well,
maybe we could do a little bit of an example to just show what we're taking the world over with. What do you say? We had talked about maybe doing a kind of a point counterpoint. I don't know if we made a decision on that, or
just tell me what you want me to do. I'll try to do it.
Well, my idea was to do a non-act kind of generalist, eclectic approach to my dilemma.
Which is your dilemma?
Well,
which one?
Yeah, I know. Well, okay, so I guess I'll just talk about something that will maybe, translate the best here. And that would be just like nervousness around doing this podcast. And I could talk about the first episode I recorded, which will come after this one, but I could talk about that and how my anxiety came up and I struggled with it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So should we start with the eclectic generalist, or should we start with CBS?
Well, I mean, I don't know about eclectic generalist, but if you're looking at pain, coming at it from pain is the problem, you might start out with all kinds of, let's think with your thoughts, let's challenge your thoughts, let's encourage you, let's affirm that you can do it, let's remember that you've done it in the past.
Can we do it? Can we do a little bit of it?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not very good at that, but okay.
Okay. Just try really hard. Whatever.
I will.
Okay.
I will.
It'll go smoothly.
Okay, right.
Okay, so I interviewed Franz de Waal.
Oh, cool.
Earlier in the week.
Sweet.
And I lost a lot of sleep the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about all the kinds of things I wanted to get at, and he's a primatologist, very well known, and was so gracious in being willing to be part of this project. And so he said like some really interesting stuff, and I was like, I had these questions I wanted to get to, and I missed out on so many things I wanted to ask him about because I was so tight, and I just was like, you had to use the bathroom, just like, and so I just have been kicking myself about all these missed questions, like these things I could have asked that would have been so appropriate and apropos to what was happening.
I'm going to pause. So right here, I might go into sort of soothing you and reassuring you, and you're human, and you did your best, and all of that stuff around, and some compassionate. Can you be compassionate with yourself and all of that, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you could do it again. What are your, maybe you could try it again. Maybe he'd be willing to do it again. What can you take from this that you can use in the future? Yeah. Right. I mean,
so you're like normalizing. Would that
like
be
normalizing, validating, acknowledging?
Why, from a functional contextual perspective, why is that not helpful?
Well, it might be. I don't know.
Damn you, functional contextualists! Take a stand.
Here I go. I'm getting ready to take a stand. You ready for it? And the stand.
I need answers.
Yeah. Okay, so my stand would be, well, what if none of that's optional? All of that distress, all of that concern, all of that anxiety that you feel about this, all of the worry, it's just not optional. This matters to you a lot, and you really don't know how it's going to turn out. So that's pretty anxiety provoking.
Okay, but okay.
Maybe the price of admission.
Okay, well, we're going to get there. We're going to get there, but stay with me on this.
That's where I'd start, though.
The normalizing. I want to know why it's from a functional, contextual, radical behavioral perspective, CBS orientation. What's wrong? What's wrong with normalizing? I know it's
nothing.
Okay, nothing's wrong with normalizing.
No, it's all contextually bound, Marcel. I mean, if I'm with a client who is super, super dysregulated and very little distress tolerance around their own experience, very, very little, I'm probably going to be doing some shaping early on. So we're like, okay, da-da-da-da,
okay.
blah, blah, blah. But that's not where I'm going to end. Where I'm going to move from that sort of, is to hardcore, full-on acceptance.
Okay, so we'll do
this is the price of admission.
We'll do that now, and then we'll talk. How about that?
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to roll real play.
What are we doing? What am I doing now? I'm going to reassure you, and then I'm going to like throw you to the wolves.
No. We've done the first. You've provided the
Right. Of course.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds
Okay.
like it was really meaningful
Yep.
to
Okay.
you. And boy, I think anyone in your position would probably be feeling that way. And,
Yeah.
maybe next time when you do it, you want to do some breathing work, like
Okay.
sort of ground yourself and bring
Okay.
yourself into bring
Yeah.
yourself into this moment,
Grounding.
grounding,
Okay.
notice that just ground yourself. And maybe before you start, if you find yourself getting really anxious, just breathe in calm, breathe out fear.
Okay.
Yada, yada,
Okay.
woof.
And what you just did
Mhm.
is not in alignment with.
No, that's not true. You're making up a rule right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're
For
saying it for a
some
reason.
people, in
you're
some
giving.
situations, there might be clinical functional utility in doing that in that
Yes.
moment.
Okay. So
For that person.
I'm not trying to make a rule, but I really want to pick apart why you're saying that. Like the reason you're bringing up those particular examples, because I think they're so important and they're something that we just lean towards naturally.
I think the underlying assumption or the underlying message that people get is when I feel well, I'll move well. First, I need to address that I feel distressed, and then I'll be able to move, right? And most people who come into my practice start with that. First I feel good, and then I behave good, right?
Yes.
And they've spent years and tens of thousands of dollars on first I'll feel good, and then right? And the heartbreaking part of it is that the pain is a problem piece is so ironically destructive, because pain and values are the same thing.
What does that mean?
Of course it hurts. It matters to you.
Okay. Yeah.
If you get rid of pain, you won't know what matters to you.
Yes.
Right. And it's dishonoring. It's like, oh, your pain is somehow broken badness, as opposed to your pain is absolutely honorable.
Yes.
It's not shameful that you feel this.
Okay.
Of course you feel this. And it's not optional. The more it matters, the more it will hurt. The more possibility it will hurt.
And the art in doing what you do is in bringing someone to that without explaining it to them. Right?
Unless I need to. No, I mean, I see this all the time with my students, I mean, it's like, I talk about it with my students a lot. It's like driving in a car with someone who doesn't know how to drive very well and is driving very poorly.
Yeah.
And you're in the passenger side, right? And you grab onto the strap, and you push your foot into the invisible brake pedal, but you don't say anything. As opposed to, dude, okay, slow down. You're going too fast. No, don't.
Okay. Right.
Stop. Let's do this again, right?
No.
I mean, why can't we see therapy as teaching? It's what it is.
Yeah.
As opposed to this sort of, I don't know, Vulcan mind meld that I'm supposed to, like I'll say to people, I don't care if you feel good. I don't care if I feel good. That's not what I'm about here. I say it right up front. If you want someone who's about to help you feel better,
maybe that's why your daughter doesn't think you're cool.
No, my daughter doesn't think I'm cool, because with her, I'm not cool. Totally not cool.
Before I forget and we lose the moment, let's go back to my example. And would you mind doing a real play with me on this?
Sure.
Okay. In the.
So I'm doing a real play with you as if you're a client, or I'm doing a real play with you as you're Marcel?
Client.
Okay, give me some background, give me some context with this.
What do you mean?
Is this a client who has some flexibility and some resilience around feeling distress, or not? Is this a client who is absolutely welded to the idea that if I'm in pain, I'm broken and bad?
Let's say 50-50. There's some resilience there, and still some gripping on to pain needs to go away to be okay.
So what am I doing? I'm doing ACT, or I'm doing...
Well, whatever you want to do. I mean, do you? How about that?
Okay, I'll do me.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So what kind of? So I did this interview this week, and it's been really bothering me. I'm really beating myself.
Slow down. Wait, slow down. Can you tell me how it's bothering you exactly?
I just get these cringeworthy moments where I remember a question that I didn't ask, a follow-up. And I think, God, I'm never going to get the opportunity again. And I looked and probably sounded like a
can you
freshman.
back up for just a second? Just a second. That cringeworthy moment, that sort of like, is it like a flinch internally? Is it like,
it's like
your heart, like you almost want to vomit?
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes, yes, I have them and I'll just go like out loud, literally.
Right. So it's a sense of like, what? Shame. I'm pathetic. I'm stupid.
And probably also the social component of like how I'm seen.
Yeah, for sure. Because you're going to be seen.
They saw me.
Yeah, for sure. It's a podcast. I mean, there'll be possibly millions of people who are going to get how completely and cluelessly defective you are.
Correct.
And that feeling, like right now, is what we're talking about, is that feeling of available to you?
No.
Okay, so you're mostly just kind of reporting it to me right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So pause. Right there, I was doing exposure. Okay. Acceptance and exposure. You started moving really quickly into something else. But the part that seemed the most, you flushed a little bit when you said that part. You looked away. Your body language was very like, get me away from this. Yeah. So I'm going to stop and we're going to come back to it, And when in that exposure, your willingness to describe it to me and engage with me with it is acceptance. We're doing acceptance. So the acceptance of the cringe. Yeah, this is what it is. Present moment was, are you feeling it right now? Yeah. Is it happening right now? Okay. Wait. Observer self, looking at, not from. Do you feel it right now in this moment? And you had to actually look at your own experience to answer that question. Mm-hmm. So right there, we just did the whole hexaflex. Well, we did everything except committed action and values, but those are implied. Okay. And so if it's not in me, do you want to kind of summon it? Would you? Is that where you would have maybe gone? Or not necessarily. You're just like, okay, he's recalling it and that's what's going on. Can we do a little? It's more than he's recalling it. I'm actually looking for the place where I see you. Kelly talks about this in Mindfulness for Two. It's such a brilliant book. That's the other ACT book to read. Yes. That's if you're not going to read any ACT book, read that one. With Troy DeFroon. Yeah, it's amazingly good book. But Kelly talks about watching for cadence. People, they go down, they slow down, then they go off. And what you want to do is dial it back to the place where they slowed down for a second and then they flinched and went off. Okay. Faster, and you did that. I had that thing, and then you started giving me a lot of stuff around it, and I was like, come back here. So what we're looking for, what I'm seeing, the contingency that I'm seeing is there's all of this sort of behavioral variability as you're describing this to me until that shows up, and then everything comes about getting away from it, changing the subject, moving off of it. Right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's pretty much what happened functionally. Yeah. So I'm going to come back to the place where the narrowing occurred. Yeah. And I'm going to block the escapes. This is ERP, exposure and response prevention. Mm-hmm. I'm going to block. You had a couple of moments where you're kind of, well, it's this, and I kept coming back. Well, is it like that? And really making it kind of sticky and palpable, right? Yeah. Yeah. And I wasn't trying to reassure you. I wasn't trying to change it. I was trying to actually help you get more connected to it. Yeah. So that's the work, really. Yeah. Because later on, I might say, that feeling of, I hate myself and everyone hates me. And I'm like, I think if you're going to do this podcast, that's going to show up. Are you willing? Yeah, I am. Yeah, right. Exactly. But if you don't have any experience at all of just having it fully and without defense as it is, and just letting it be there, which we just did. Yeah. Stopped and we brought you back, stayed. I might reference back to, remember that time where we were talking about when you first started telling me and you had that, did you notice it? You did it there. Mm-hmm. There you go. And I'm not going to make any comments about going forward or anything like that. Okay. I need to stop soon. Okay. I think it is a good place to wind down. Yeah. Yeah. Good luck with this podcast. I think it's going to be great. I'm so I think it's going to be so great. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm so happy that you are the first one to sit down with me. Okay. Well, the second one.
Well, yeah, but as far as really talking about what I want to talk about, and and so I'm really excited about this. I've got a host of splendid people who are going to join me. Yeah, Yvonne Barnes Holmes and Nicholas Turnicky and Miranda Morris, Jonathan Cantor, amongst others, and a behaviorist who's not CBS.
Yeah, and Glenn Callahan too.
Glenn, oh yeah, yes. I'm very excited about that. So, so Joanne, you are available for consultation. I'm going to I'll put your website in the. Is that what you want? They can get a hold of you through.
And we're developing we're in the process, myself and people in Israel, of doing an online sort of training. We're trying to figure out how to help people do exposure work from an ACT perspective. Okay. And actually help people develop those skills. Like we just did a second ago, I was talking to you about how I noticed how your repertoire narrowed and I could catch it, helping people be able to catch those moments and work with them. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay. But that'll be probably in the next, it'll probably take about 6 months or a year.
And that information will be on your website or?
Yeah, it'll be on there. And it'll be in Hebrew and English.
Okay. It'll be online training. Okay. Okay. And you talked about books and what else? Anything else we need to talk about?
No.
Your Denver place? No? Okay.
No.
I want to talk about, just really quickly, is another podcast I have going. Okay. And it's all about health. And the title is Honorable Evolution. And
sweet.
I'm talking to folks who are really walkers of the talk and who are just doing a phenomenal job of taking care of themselves. And I want to pick their brains about how they're doing that. So I'm going to be talking to musicians, poets, badass yoga nuns, black belts, white belts, all kinds of folks.
That sounds fabulous.
Yeah. And, I'm a firm believer that a lot of, aside from language, a big part of our struggles as humans, Homo sapiens, is how much we've deviated from just the natural course of our evolution and our lifestyles. Right. And so I find the more that I kind of incorporate some more of that natural stuff and make loud sounds, the healthier I am. So
did that cringing shame thing just show up right there? There it was. A little flicker of it, right?
Is this an explicit podcast? Can I tell you to fuck off, or is that?
Well, I already ruined it by saying the F-bomb. So you're going to have to put explicit on this one because All right.
Thank you, Joanne.
You're so welcome.
It was a pleasure. Will you come back?
Sure.
I want to check in with you and I want to get your guidance some more.
Oh, no worries. I'm happy to do it anytime. Anything I can do to help. Take care.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
But I'm getting stronger. They take a piece of me. But I'm getting stronger. They take a piece of me. But I'm getting stronger. They take a piece of me. But I'm getting stronger. Slices and slices